Hey you! Yeah, you! Do you like coffee, but you don't know the best way to make it? Maybe you've tried coffee bags, but they're hard to open, and it just feels like you're making a cup of tea. Ooh, tea. You've tried plungers, but you never know when you're supposed to push the knob down, and sometimes it all just falls over. Maybe you've brought a stovetop espresso, but you can't work out how it all goes together. Why does it have to be so complicated? You need an automatic coffee making machine. Making a delicious cup of hot, steaming coffee is as simple as hitting a button, hitting a button, hitting a button. It looks like this machine is broken. Welcome to the basement. So here we have the machine. It's a Krups brand. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. Let me just check.
Krups.
Yes, apparently that is how you say it. This machine was dragged out of an e-waste bin, so I know that it must have some stuff wrong with it, but I don't know exactly what is wrong with it just yet. So we're going to have a look at it today, fire it up, see if it runs or if it doesn't run, and what might just be the problem. But first we're going to have a look around the machine, just look at its features, and then we'll have a look at pulling it apart and seeing if we can fix it. So looking at the front panel, we have either a single shot or double shot espresso. Then we have coffee, which I assume must be different to espresso, but espresso is coffee, so I'm not quite sure why it has a coffee button and an espresso button. But it looks like there's two different sizes, one for a cup and a saucer and one for a mug. Then we have a power button, and then we have a button for water, hot water, and steam. And then over here it says automatic, and it says cappuccino or cafe latte, and I assume that that has to do with frothing the milk function. So if we have a look what's underneath this control panel, we have where the coffee comes out, and that can slide down and up depending on the size of cup, presumably. And there's also a slider on top of the machine, and if I pull it over, it slides this prong down, and it would slide it into the coffee cup, presumably to froth up the milk or add steam or something to it. So it has two hatches on top. Inside this hatch we have our water container. So that just lifts out and you can go take it to the tap and fill it up. And in the other hatch here we have a control panel. It's got a few buttons there, P, a C, a spanner, minus, plus and an OK. We have a receptacle here for pre-ground coffee. You'd put it in there and put it into the machine, and of course your coffee beans go in the back here with this dial. You can adjust the fineness of the grind, and of course we can open the front of it, and that's how you get the drip tray out. It's quite a deep drip tray full of old coffee already in there. It's a bit gross. Let's put it back. So let's turn it on and see what it does. So it's got a switch at the back. Switch that on and hopefully something comes up on the screen. There we go. Machine is in standby. So let's hit the power button, and it wants us to set the time. So I'll use that control panel we saw earlier. I'll just hit OK. Now it's asking us to fill the water tank. So now it's saying put a container under the steam nozzle and press hot water button. So it must want to flush the system through. So I'll get a container and try it out. So it's making a noise. I can hear the pump running, but it doesn't seem to be doing anything. Yeah, I've done that, so let's try it again. Water. So I've hit that button quite a few times. Nothing's coming out, so that's telling me that there's something wrong with the pump. Maybe it's the seals in the pump, or maybe there's a blockage or something like that. So I think there's nothing left for it but to start pulling it apart. Right, I think what I haven't appreciated is just how big this thing is. I've never really worked on anything in my workshop this big before, so the challenge is getting it all on camera. But if we have a look in the side of the machine here, it's got a little spanner which tells me that there's something that needs servicing inside this hatch, so I'm going to start there. Okay, this must be like the tamping mechanism in here. I don't know what this does. Oh, now it's jammed. But maybe that, oh, it comes out. There we go. Right, so that's gross. It's full of coffee. So that's where the ground coffee goes to, gets tamped down, and then the hot water runs through it. Now there's a hose on here, and presumably the hot water is going to go through there and through the I don't know what that's called, the tamping head, and then it's going to make its way through the coffee into the cup. So there could be a blockage in this. I'll put that aside and have a closer look in a minute. So if we have a look in here, then we can see that there's the motor, which is in charge of the tamping mechanism. There is a lot of coffee in here. I might get the vacuum out and start to remove a bunch of this coffee. So this is the side that the water slides in, and there's like an input here for the water. Now that would run down to the pump, I'd imagine. So I'm going to try and pull this side apart. I reckon the pump's in this side of it somewhere. So let's continue. Okay, I'm in the machine finally. It took ages because this thing is locked together like some sort of 3D puzzle. It doesn't have many screws on it, and I took all the screws off that I could find, but it still resisted coming apart. You have to find the right piece to pull off first, and then the rest of it will sort of slide off. And anyway, we're in now. This looks to me like the water pump, and that's my first suspect. So the water goes in here, and it goes into this pump, and then it goes through. That looks to me like the water heater. That's where it turns into steam and goes on from there. So I might carefully stand it back up and keep everything connected that needs to. Now, just a disclaimer, of course, this is dangerous and all live wires. I'm going to be connecting it to power. Don't do this at home if you don't know what you're doing. Okay, I've kind of got it back together. I'm just hoping this will sit in here without the housing. Okay, so I would have thought with the tank on, this pipe should fill up with water, but I can't actually see if it is. So if I push on the bottom of the tank, water runs out, but it doesn't go any further. And I'd imagine it should go down there. Okay, this is the inlet water pipe that was underneath that fitting, and it is actually full of water. I couldn't quite tell, but yes, now when I squeeze it, I can see the water level moving in there. So the water's going in, but it's not getting past this thing here, or it's not getting pumped on this blue thing here. So I'm going to do some more digging and seeing if there's any blockage I can find anywhere around here. So I've removed the pressure pump from the machine. It's just sitting here on the bench, but it's still connected. I've manually charged this line with water, and I've removed all the fittings off the other side. So in theory, if this pump is working, which I'm hoping it is, because this is probably the most expensive part of the unit, it should squirt water out. Now I can trick the machine into thinking the tank is installed by holding a magnet in front of this sensor. But of course now I've run out of hands to push the button, so let's see if I can reach around and get the button. Okay. Well, that looks like it's working fine. That's spitting water out. So whether the pump just had an airlock or there might be an issue with this thing here. So this looks to be like another type of pump. Okay, good news and bad news. I actually searched the part number on here, and it turns out it is a flow sensor. So it's not a pump at all. It's designed just to measure the flow going into the pump. So I wonder if it was just an airlock or something that was stopping this from working, because the pump's certainly working and pumping water now. So I might put it all back together, but unfortunately, while I was Googling, I heard a sizzling noise, and all of a sudden there was a loud bang. and this thing exploded everywhere. Looks like a paper capacitor, like a reefer type. It was in here, and now it's all over the bench and everything. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to figure out now what it is and if I can get a replacement or modify a different capacitor to be in its place. So I'm going to have to figure that out, and I'll come back when I know what I'm doing. Okay, it's a few days later, and you can see it's all back together. I haven't tested it yet. I managed to find another protection capacitor thing, and I've put that in, wired it all back together, and I can't actually find any glaring problem with it, other than the fact that when I first tested the water pump, it didn't work, and then when I removed it from the machine and tested it out from the machine on the bench, then it pumped. So I'm wondering if there was something stuck in there, or it was a bit seized or something, and the act of me pulling it out and manipulating it, playing around with it, freed it up enough for it to work again. That's my theory anyway, but we'll find out if it is working, if there's any other thing wrong with the machine by turning it on. So first things first, I think we need to put some water in it. Well, that's what it's going to tell us anyway. So let's flick it on. So it says it's in standby. Let's hit the power button. And wants us to do the time setting, so I'll just hit OK. Right, that's a bit different. It's saying it's preheating, now it's saying to fill the water tank, so let's do that. But before we do, let me tell you about PCBWay. Now before you skip ahead, just let me say thanks to PCBWay. It's because of them I actually can do stuff on this channel. They've been a kind sponsor for a long time now, and it allows me to buy tools and parts and consumables to fix up these old machines, especially when I do something wrong and blow something up. So it's always good to have their support, because without them I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do. So thanks PCBWay. Why don't you check them out for your next project? They do circuit boards, but they do heaps more than that. They do CNC machining and 3D printing, and you can actually prototype your project from start to finish. They do fast quotes, friendly service, and it's top-notch quality. You won't be disappointed if you choose PCBWay. So let's put some water in the machine, see what happens. Okay, rinse, press hot water button. This is where we got to before, and nothing happened. So let's hit it. Well, it's making some different noises. That's really promising. There we go. Look at that. Water's coming out. It says appliance ready, select beverage. So it looks like it's working. It's fixed. But we've still got to make a coffee. So I'm going to get some coffee beans, throw them in, and we'll see what it tastes like. Okay, I've got some coffee, and I'll put it in the hopper. And I've got my glass. Does it fit? I'll just hold it there. And I think I've decided I'm going to have a double espresso, so I'll hit that. It's looking good. Smells great. Okay, it's really filling up now. Well, it certainly looks like coffee. It's very dark. It smells like coffee. I guess there's one thing left to do, and that is see if it tastes like coffee. Yeah, that's great. Well, it looks like I've fixed this machine, and I've figured out a nice, lazy way to make excellent coffee. You've been in the basement. Have a great day.